So let's get started. I'm Amelia Templeton. I'm a reporter with Oregon Public Broadcasting, and I cover housing and homelessness, among other things. And I'm going to be leading this presentation and conversation about ADUs as a strategy to fight displacement. Lots of cities are looking for solutions to rising housing prices, and it's an idea that's gained some traction recently. We have three panelists today who are all experimenting with how to use ADUs to keep homes affordable for seniors, people of color, and other groups that are finding themselves priced out as neighborhoods that they've historically lived in become more desirable. And we're going to start with a presentation from Nicole Joslin. She is here from Austin, Texas. I hear that Austin is the Portland of Texas, or maybe Portland is the Austin of Oregon. Nicole is the executive director of the Austin Community Design and Development Center. She's been helping homeowners there design and build ADUs. She's overcome all sorts of Texas-sized obstacles to do that, and she's going to tell us about the Alley Flat Initiative project. Thanks, Nicole.
Hey everybody, my name is Nicole, and as I was introduced, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called the Austin Community Design Development Center. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for all through community engaged design. So we are architects and planners, and we work on affordable housing and other community development projects across Austin and Central Texas. So a little bit of facts about Austin as an intro. As many of the cities we've heard about today, we're facing a rapid population growth, which comes with gentrification and demographic change across our city. One of the favorite lines across Austin is that we're adding over 100 people a day, which amounts to about 40,000 people a year, and our housing production is not keeping up with that demand, which means that the affordable housing stock in the city is very limited. Our renter population in the city is very cost burdened. 48% of renters in our city pay more than 30% of their income in rent. If you're looking at the lower income people in Austin that make 50% median family income or less, 92% of them are cost burdened. So a lot of our lower income renters are facing challenges finding affordable housing. Our city actually just passed its first ever strategic housing plan, which is pretty awesome. And it has a goal of creating 135,000 new housing units in the city over the next 10 years through various policies and programs. 60,000 of those are intended to be available to 80% median family income or below. And infill development like ADUs has specifically been called out as a strategy that they want to help implement across the city to solve this problem. So East Austin is one of the places in the city that's facing a lot of this displacement pressure. In the Blackland neighborhood, which is where we work a lot, they have seen a 41% change in property ownership over the last 10 years, which is pretty crazy, especially considering that they have a pretty well-established community development corporation in the neighborhood that owns and operates 20% of the residential units there as affordable housing, but they're still seeing this turnover. So this kind of goes to show that we're facing not only a shortage of affordable rental housing, we're also facing the challenge of preserving the existing affordable housing that we have in our neighborhoods. So one of our programs, which I guess you guys can probably guess, sees ADUs as a potential solution for this problem of no affordable rental and displacement of existing low-income homeowners, and it's called the Alley Flat Initiative. ACDDC is kind of the daily operator of the program, and we partner with the University of Texas Center for Sustainable Development on research, and we partner with a local community development corporation called the Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation. They help us with policy and regulation advocacy. So this is what an ADU in Austin looks like. They're all detached. We're not actually allowed to build attached ADUs right now. We're rewriting our land development code, so hopefully we'll get some of that. They're usually about 850 square feet. They can be up to 1,100 square feet now. And as Jake Wegman mentioned earlier, the alley flat is sort of our brand of green and affordable ADU. So it's green because it meets at least a 3-star rating in our local green building code, which is a predecessor to the national green building code called LEED. And they're income restricted because our units participate in the city's affordable housing program. They get permit fee waivers in exchange for committing to a certain period of affordability at a certain MFI. So right now, most of our units are 80% median family income for 5 years or more. And the homeowner gets permit fees waived, expedited permit review. In theory, sometimes that doesn't really happen. And then they access benefits from our nonprofit as fee reductions for architectural fees and things like that. So my organization is kind of the navigator for homeowners. Okay. And we design units, and we also help them go through the regulatory and permitting process. So just to show you a few of the houses that we've built and who we serve, we work with 2 different property types or property owners. We work with community development corporations who own single-family lots and operate them as affordable housing but have vacant backyards. We also work with private homeowners just on the open market that are interested in building these units and committing to the affordability period. So this one is actually on the ground floor. There's a studio apartment and then an office on the second floor. The office on the second floor is sometimes an STR, which is not supported by our organization but works for that homeowner. This one was also built by a private homeowner. There's a 4-person family that lives in the back house and a 3-person family in the front house, and they seem to be very happy with their situation, even though they only have 10 feet between their houses. And then this one you saw earlier, this one was built by the Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation. It's a studio, it's fully accessible. It was originally built as a literal granny flat. The low-income family in the front house had a grandmother that needed a house, and so the Community Development Corporation built a house for her in their backyard. This one we just completed in April. It's in a historic neighborhood called Clarksville in Austin. It's also down in the showcase downstairs. So this one is occupied by a family as well and is just right around the corner from this amazing elementary school. So one of the challenges that we've faced that have been talked about a lot in this today is financing. So we're working on our own financing program right now in partnership with the city. It's not off the ground yet, but we've been trying to figure out how we can work with a local financing institution to provide the mortgage that a low-income homeowner would actually qualify, and then cover the rest of that with a forgivable loan from the city. So we're kind of looking like a third by the city and 2/3 by the homeowner, and being able to retain that 80% in MFI homeowner and create the affordable rental in addition in the backyard. So maintaining the low-income homeowner and providing affordable rental at the same time. We're still kind of figuring that out, but thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So next we have David Foster. He's the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay. He works in Santa Cruz, which is one of the most expensive housing markets in the country. And his branch of Habitat has really embraced ADUs. They add them to all of the new homes that they build. And they've also launched an initiative to help build them for low-income senior homeowners. And that is the program that David will be telling us about today. Come on up.
So, let's see. This is a brand new program that we've started in Habitat. This is new to Habitat. Habitat affiliates usually only do home ownership programs, so we kind of are going outside of the box. Does that go? One of the reasons is that we really do have a housing crisis in Santa Cruz County, but we have a housing crisis especially for seniors with the doubling of our population of seniors in the next 25 years. So Habitat in Santa Cruz County and Monterey County, we've been building ADUs on single-family homes whenever we get a chance. And then those are tenants in common that, so that each homeowner has their exclusive right to their home and share in the ownership of the land jointly. These are two families. They're putting in their 500 hours of what we call sweat equity, helping build the homes. And that really, they're working along with the volunteers, and that helps keep the cost down. We've learned from the 4 ADUs that we've built under just doing it this way that takes about 5 months to build using volunteers. The My House, My Home program is really to focus on helping seniors age in place. It's also in order to create some new affordable rentals in the community. So we think it's kind of saving one house and helping them keep their home and creating a new one. We call this feeding 2 birds with 1 scone. And here's, just real briefly, just looking at it, the big thing here is that by partnering with existing senior homeowners, we're completely avoiding the problem of trying to buy land and build from the beginning. And getting rid of the land cost significantly reduces the cost of getting these units built in the community. I want to tell you about the Whitley family. This is our very first ADU that we've done with the My House, My Home program. Sterling is 85 and they moved to Santa Cruz in the 50s. He worked in the cannery and then in the cement factory. And Carrie worked with Head Start and then Salvation Army. Their condition is that their house is fine for them. They need some grab bars and that kind of thing. But their real problem is they're not able to continue living without the assistance of a caregiver. And so what we're building is an attached ADU so that their low-income daughter can live in the back of the unit. AARP gave us a grant to do the landscaping in the front, so we closed down the street for a day and had NAACP came out and did a barbecue with us, and we completely rebuilt the front yard landscaping, and that unit will be finished maybe by Thanksgiving. The next one I want to tell you about is Ronita and Alain. Ronita's owned her home for probably about 30 years now. It's a very small 2-bedroom house, and in the back of it is a garage that was converted probably 25 years ago illegally, and Alain lives there. Alain is disabled senior with a Section 8 certificate. Every year, her unit passes the housing quality standards with the Housing Authority, but they've been red tagged. So now the problem is, what do we do with Alain? So the idea is Elaine's going to move in with Ronita for 5 months while we rebuild her unit. And you can see there's some major work there. And I think at this point, the city has agreed, just tear it down and build it new. And that's going to save us time and money. And the city's agreed that that might be the better way to do it. And they'll allow us to keep the 0 setback along the side of the property line there. So anyway, that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And now, finally, we have Helen Leung, who is the co-executive director of LA-Más. It's an urban design organization with a mission to support low-income communities through policy and architecture in Los Angeles. And in LA, affordable housing has historically meant high-rises, often in poorer neighborhoods. Helen is part of a pilot project that's trying to show that ADUs can provide a more integrated and different kind of affordable housing. Helen, thank you.
Hi, my name is Helen. It's an honor to be here because a part of the work that's happening in Los Angeles is inspired by what has happened in Santa Cruz and in Portland and Austin. So what I'm going to share with you in the next 5 minutes is bits and parts of kind of the inspiring ideas we have heard throughout the nation. So again, my name is Helen, and I co-run an urban design nonprofit, kind of like a community design center. We're based in Los Angeles, and one of our initiatives has been really to support lower income communities, specifically on our housing crisis in Los Angeles. Our team is part policy planning, architecture design, and a lot of community engagement. So sorry that I don't understand why it looks like that. So you're gonna have to bear with me. So our thesis is that we want to combine those tools of policy and design to create impact. And in LA, like many of the cities that are dealing with their housing crisis, we are one of the most unaffordable cities to live relative to wages. And that's actually happening kind of in a time in Los Angeles where we're going through our largest transit expansion, which means that all this new infrastructure investment that's coming to Los Angeles with the ballot measure, it means that so many neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles City and Los Angeles County will be facing unprecedented investment. And with the high cost of housing, how do we end up supporting those neighbors, especially those renters and longtime homeowners, to be able to save in those communities? There's a lot of opportunity in Los Angeles. In the city of Los Angeles, there's 500,000 single-family lots, and academic studies have shown that over 50,000 unpermitted units. So clearly there is a lot of potential, and that there's also an untapped market, and it organically has been happening in Los Angeles. These unpermitted ADUs have been in garage conversions sprinkled throughout Los Angeles, and with Denise's leadership that you heard this morning with the new state law in California, LA is really starting to think about, well, what can we do to be able to move the needle, make it easier, and make it more accessible, not just for middle-income homeowners who have the equity and to be able to do this work, but also for low to moderate income homeowners and low to moderate income tenants. It's hard to see this, but there's a movement of NIMBYism in Los Angeles where there's this love affair for the single-family neighborhood, and so much so that there was a ballot measure to try to stop development that was kind of doesn't fit into the existing zoning code. And in Los Angeles, our zoning code hadn't been updated since the 1940s. So with that, there's a lot of unpredictability in the development process, and there was a backlash by people who wanted to vote to not allow for high-rise development. So we knew that in order to do something with ADUs, we really had to get the larger public to buy into this as a housing solution for everyone that also supports the character of our neighborhoods. And our idea for kind of ADUs as a strategy kind of started in our own backyard. We are based in a neighborhood, a gentrifying neighborhood in Northeast LA, where next to the LA River, with that investment coming, there was this dual desire when we heard from the community that they wanted to not have high-rise affordable housing complexes because, to the point raised earlier, it was something that was not going to be for them. They would have to wait a long time, and it compromised the character of the neighborhood. So with that sentiment, and it's a sentiment that we hear throughout Los Angeles, that desire for housing affordability, but for contextual development, the backyard unit really became this model of, well, what can we do with that? So it's hard to see here, but this is actually a program that we partnered with in partnership with the mayor's office in the city of Los Angeles. They had an innovation team funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies. Jason here used to be that team, so you can chat with him to learn a little bit more about that. The mayor's office chose to focus on housing affordability and specifically ADUs. So we partnered with them to figure out how can we demonstrate and create one ADU, just one, that is an example of really four things. Can it be affordably built? Can it be well designed? Can we test a new financial product? And can that be used to inform policy? And this was a project that actually started before state law had passed. So we end up finding a homeowner in a historic neighborhood. This is a craftsman-style house. And part of that slide is that in this neighborhood, there's actually lots of unpermitted units ADUs that have been in place. So what we're proposing to do is something that we want to blend into the existing fabric of the community. And right now, this ADU is under construction. I show this slide because it kind of reflects the partnerships at the table to make this possible. Not only was the Mayor's Innovation Team part of it, we had our support from the Department of City Planning, the planning director, the local council member. We have a strong council week mayor system. And we also had a CDFI, Genesis LA, that was there to provide the loan financing. And we partnered with Habitat for Humanity in Los Angeles. So hopefully when this is done, we'll also win an award like you guys did in Santa Cruz. And this actually is just a playful rendering. I know, sorry, it looks so bad in this format, of what this could look like in terms of new construction in a historic neighborhood. And our goal is to highlight, well, this could not only be affordably built, but it could also be beautifully designed, and that would actually help with kind of the NIMBY movement, just because there isn't a strong and a high amount of ADUs that have been permitted in Los Angeles until this year. And the rendering I showed you earlier, you weren't able to see kind of the ADU that was planned, so that's actually where it is. It sits in the back of an existing, in back of a craftsman-style home. And that craftsman-style new ADU kind of has playful elements, but yet is able to still be affordably built at around $200,000, 2 bedroom, 2 bathrooms, 2 floors. You see Senator Wieckowski here, with the support of, his leadership on a state level. We are still keeping an eye out to make sure that as the city of Los Angeles adopts its policy, that it's going to be just as progressive and inclusive. So we look forward to that happening. The county of Los Angeles, which is slightly different from the city, includes LA as one of the 88 cities. They're looking to figure out how to support creating a program that pars Section 8 with ADU development. And we, with the support of, so in terms of what we're going to do to figure out how can we actually create ADUs that support either a low-income homeowner or provide support for a low-income tenant, we are actually, with the support of LIST, the Local Initiative Support Corporation in Los Angeles, we're funded to put together a program which will hopefully be something like the Alley Flat Initiative, or what Portland is doing with its 5 units that Inhabit is leading. And so we're in the process now of figuring out how can we use our Section 8 voucher system, which has lots of vouchers, not enough landlords, so there's a built-in subsidy there, and how can we leverage that and end up creating a program in Los Angeles that is a combination of project management, financing, construction, waive fees. So that combination is what we're looking to put together now. Thank you.
These mics, oh, they are, great. You guys each get your own mic.
Down there. Forget it.
It's my Three Stooges routine, part of this presentation. So, thank you guys so much. And to kick off the sort of conversation and question and answer part of the presentation, you've each given us a taste of your sort of professional goals and professional experience trying to create affordable ADUs. And I'm just curious if any of you have personal experiences with them, either have them on your block and in your neighborhood, or have ever lived in one or helped somebody build one.
I have a lot of friends that live in ADUs in Austin, and I have probably 3 or 4 on my block. Yeah, I think they're great, and I help people build them every day.
What have you learned from, what have you just learned from your sort of personal experience living with them on your block and having a lot of people, probably younger people that living there?
Well, one of the first things that comes up in my neighborhood about ADUs is parking, people being concerned about parking. I have never experienced that on my street. I know that other places might be different, but I've never really noticed an addition of any cars on my street. In a lot of the places that I've seen them in other neighborhoods where I live, I've actually seen a lot of families living in them, and I think there's this preconception about them being only for single people or young people or small households, but I've seen plenty of them that have 3 or 4 people living in them just fine. So.
And David and Helen, what about you two? Do you have any sort of personal experiences in your neighborhood or in your family with ADUs?
I grew up in this neighborhood where I would say half of my friends lived in garage conversions, and seeing that gap between my friends who live in these places growing up and the cost for that to happen, maybe a couple of $1,000s, and that big gap between what it takes to permit that is something that we're trying to figure out how to support families throughout Los Angeles. And that gap of knowledge and funding and process is so big that the cost of just $10,000 for permits and not knowing like where to go, what the process is, the predictability is something I can't imagine seeing the friends that I grew up with and their parents actually going through that process. So I think that there's such a need to figure out how to support that, and that's why there's probably 50,000 unpermitted units in Los Angeles, because I just saw a piece in my neighborhood, but I'm sure it's prevalent throughout Los Angeles.
One of the things that I think is so interesting about this, just riffing off of what you've said, is this is kind of a solution that people came up with for themselves and on their own, but of course underground, and it's now trying to figure out how can these institutions sort of find a way to make that solution broader scale or something that's above board so that people aren't at risk of losing their apartments. So David, how about you? What's your personal experience?
I walked my block with my dog every morning, and we've got 30 homes approximately in our block, and I've counted 8 accessory dwelling units. 3 of them are legal. One of them's a tiny house that, Sunday afternoon the fence went away and it moved in and the fence went back. One of the units is red tagged by the city, which the city isn't enforcing it at this point, but they can't get a permit to get their roof fixed. So that was another thing. A Sunday afternoon, everybody knew what happened when the roofers came in and did that work quickly when the city wasn't watching. And now they have a great roof on their ADU. So we've really got a crisis problem, I think, in Santa Cruz. They have 400 ADUs that are red tagged, and they know if they enforce that, they're going to be adding significantly to our homeless population because there isn't anywhere else to go for folks that are living that way. So it's a major problem, and we need an amnesty program and all kinds of funding and assistance with tenants' rights and assistance with relocation money to help as we do those repair works.
I want to add on real quickly. What's interesting in Los Angeles is we have a rent stabilization ordinance, and that rent control actually extends to ADUs, even those that are unpermitted. So one of the challenges that we've seen in terms of the legal advocacy nonprofit groups that are supporting tenants that are getting potentially kicked out of the unpermitted garage conversions is that tension between these homeowners who have garage conversions that are acting as unpermitted ADUs. How do they actually bring it up to compliance without kicking out the tenants who are there? And that's something that LA hasn't figured out yet, and it's a challenge because they're still required to pay relocation fees, the homeowners.
One of the things that I am curious about for each of your programs in the sort of different stages that they're at, you are trying to help often sort of 2 people at once, a homeowner and a renter, and more than 2 people potentially, but 2 sort of parties at once. And I want to just take the homeowner first. Tell me a little bit about how you split the cost between, say, the city, your nonprofit, and the homeowner when it comes to actually building the ADU, and how you make sure that potentially middle-income or low-income homeowner doesn't take on more new debt than they can really handle. What are the sort of, how do you balance those financial considerations?
I'll go just because I have an answer. In our program, the city is matching our funds, so they're providing a match up to $80,000 per unit. And that money can be a totally deferred payment loan in order to make sure that it remains affordable. Then the Habitat loan comes into play, and again, if needed, we can defer that payment so that their entire, after you add in their income, their rental income, so that all of their housing costs remain at 30% or less of their actual income. So if it needs to be deferred, it can be. Then on top of that, we have a third loan from Habitat for the value of the donated labor of building the home, and that's about $50,000. And that loan is simply sitting there as a totally deferred and forgivable loan. It's forgiven at 5% a year, so that at the end of 20 years, they're completely relieved from the rental affordability requirements that come with the project. They can pay their way out of that anytime they want. So a senior, you know, if they pass away and their estate inherits the property, they can turn around and sell that property, and they would then pay those loans back at that time. So it's a way to make sure that the affordability, either the loans get paid back or we get the 20 years of affordability out of the project.
So just to make sure that I'm understanding that, so there's a couple different slices of loans which can be deferred if a person is struggling to pay them back, and then the free labor piece of it, as long as that unit is kept affordable and is rented out at a, what are you guys setting as affordable?
It's set by the city actually to be affordable for a family at 60% of the AMI. The nice thing is, though, that the easy answer is for them to rent to somebody with a Section 8 certificate, because that allows a fair market rent, which is quite a bit higher than what the affordable rent level would be under the city's program.
How about you? How are you? What's the sort of balance of who's contributing what, and how are you making the financing work?
Well, I want his program. Right now, so the units that we have on the ground right now for private homeowners, at least, it's totally different for the community development corporations because they have access to other types of funding through the city. But I'll just talk about homeowners themselves. So far, all of the units that we've built with homeowners have been financed by them. So it just depends on how much savings they have, how much equity they have, how they can access a mortgage in any way possible. That means that most of them are higher income homeowners that also sort of have the social mission to provide affordable housing in their neighborhood. So we've been lucky to find people like that, but we haven't really been able to go to the lower income homeowners. So our program normally operates where we can get permit fees waived, which are a couple $1,000s in Austin. We charge about a quarter to a third of what a normal architect would charge to design the unit, get it permitted, go through the whole process. And we work with contractors to lower the cost of construction. But our new financing program, which we're trying to work out, would have about a $100,000 mortgage from a local financing institution that we've been working with, hopefully a $50,000 forgivable loan from the city. And then we are also trying to partner with our housing authorities on getting Section 8 voucher holders in those units too. And all of that combined would mean that an 80% median family homeowner would be renting to a 50% renter and still cash flowing about $350 a month.
So to date, you've been sort of taking advantage of private property owners who are interested in adding a unit and who are willing to rent that unit out at an affordable rate to add a little bit more affordable rental in the neighborhood. And what you're hoping to kind of shift more towards is also trying to find a way to make it feasible financially for lower income homeowners as well.
Yeah.
Helen, how about you?
Well, our program is nowhere as advanced. For the single unit that the mayor's office has sponsored, the way that we try to test the financing is that the council office paid for our time to find the property owner, do the design and the permitting, be a project manager. But what was really helpful was that a local community development financial institute in Los Angeles provided that construction loan, because that was the way to demonstrate to the larger financial market, like, hey, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, this could be a market and this is not that hard. So that was actually one key way that we actually were able to test one financial loan product in hopes that will be brought to scale. In terms of using Section 8 and creating a program similar to in Santa Cruz and in Austin, I think our goal is to figure out how can there be a financial solution, and with the support of Wells Fargo and especially LIS, national CDFI, we're hoping to figure out how can CDFIs actually be able to provide that support. And then in our focus groups that we're looking to have this year and launch a program next year, then we're trying to figure out, well, what matters more to these middle, moderate income homeowners who are progressive and want to be able to contribute to the housing solution? Is it going to be helpful that the permits are waived, if permit design fees are reduced, if construction is lower? We're trying to figure out what's the most important. And then after we do that, then we'll target low income homeowners. But for now, because we have Section 8 as our goal, we at least are able to create that impact first and foremost.
So I just want to reach out. Are there questions in the audience? Are there things people want to hear from our panelists?
Well, for David, how did you get your city council to agree to your program?
That question was just seconded by a couple of people up here.
I think the city and the county is agreeing that we have a housing crisis. We just completed a week-long housing crisis forum with activities week-long, 1 or 2 activities a day. So we realize we're in a crisis situation, and I think there's even talk that the city could use that crisis as a way to say, you know what, now it's time for a moratorium on all the illegal ADUs. Now's also a time to ask the state to back off on some of their code regulations for helping us, address the health and safety issues without having to trigger all of the other code enforcement things. So, we're in a unique crisis situation, I think, in Santa Cruz.
Where does the money come from? Our city councils always say they agree with all these values, but they always say, oh, but we don't have the money.
Santa Cruz is broke. And the nice thing about doing very tiny houses and small little projects is that they have little bits of money, not enough to do a really good, big housing project, but enough to help a small ADU program.
So I'm actually curious first if Nicole or Helen have thoughts about the kind of political obstacles. What do you hear from your city council when you're pitching these projects, and what kind of arguments have you made to them as to why ADUs are worth investing in?
A lot of what we hear in Austin is that ADUs, even if we allow people to build more of them, they're still really expensive. So in Austin, we have a lot of developers that are building them speculatively, where they'll buy a single family lot and usually tear down the front house, build a new front house, build an ADU, and then condo the property and sell them separately. So a lot of times those units are being sold for $500,000, even though they're 800 square feet. And yeah, that's not capital A affordable, but that's still more affordable than the $2 million house that would have gone up otherwise. So, I mean,
I think in Portland, there's actually some hope that we might be able to convince developers to start doing something more like that, as opposed to just tearing down the small, $250,000 home and replacing it with a single $1 million home.
Yeah. I mean, it's good in some ways and hurtful in other ways. And I think that if there were more opportunities to build them that are income restricted, I think that developers might participate, because there's still a way to make money. Affordable housing developers all over the country still make money, and this could be just another tool for them. But the affordability part is something that we hear a lot, and my organization just goes out and says, no, there's a way to make these affordable, but we need other tools in our toolkit other than land development regulations. We need access to funding and financing for people.
And Helen, what about you?
It helped that California, the governor kind of brought a new law for us to have to adopt. But in Los Angeles, because the political system is, weak mayor, strong council, and it's 15 city council member, what really helped was that the mayor's office was the lead and supported the program. And then we were able to find a champion with one council member and then slowly build those numbers so that we got kind of a majority, but still focusing on the committee level and being able to just power map and figure out who can be the loudest champions and how do we get those who have constituents who are going to say, no, I'm not going to buy this, and to have them not be as vocal. So it's still a work in progress. LA is still going to be passing their kind of local ADU ordinance, and we're going to still see what that's going to look like. But I think being able to kind of build the support and give council members and organize behind the scenes to showcase that they actually have people in their community who want this, and those are not the loudest voices always. So there has to be some organizing and marketing and education that we still have to do.
We have another person in the audience.
Hi, my name is Annie Rose Shapiro. I'm a realtor and housing activist here in Portland. And I'm always curious about how do we create models that can be applied in other places? How do we create easy guidelines? Because I want each of your programs to be everywhere. They're fantastic. So I know every situation is different, but I guess what do you all know of in place where we can transport these models to other cities? What kind of guidebook could we have of basic steps that then could be applied for other nonprofits, other cities, other Habitat for Humanity branches and CDCs? Thank you.
Well, since our Los Angeles program is fairly new, I think we actually turned to Austin and Santa Cruz, and you guys are really good at putting your programs out there on your website, but Cole and Eli's website, accessory is a great place where all the information is put there. And it's been interesting that as we're trying to figure this out, we can easily just email folks and they'll be happy to share their program. So I think there's already some information out there, and the booklets and the guides that are out there are kind of unique to just the city because LA has so many specific rules that it may not be as relevant elsewhere. But I think the basic principles are prevalent through all of our programs of financing and outreach and kind of design, construction, innovations, and permitting, et cetera.
Yeah, we have a design catalog that we have built over the last few years of standard designs that we work off of, but then also adding more clarity to the process of getting a unit built and trying to make transparent the complicated land development code around them. So I would say that the kind of base level thing you need in your city for something like these programs to happen is the land development code, access to funding, and the political will and sort of support from the community or leaders in the community in some way to make it something that people can get behind.
Writing a manual is, we wrote it 3/4 of the way through, and then we did our first project, and we said, okay, change this, and then we went to the second project and said again, we have to change it. When you're working with senior homeowners especially, and you look at the individual needs of their home, and one's got termites, and one has handicap accessibility issues, and one has lots of lot size, and the other has a 0 setback problem. We just kind of put that on hold for the moment, and we're concentrating on getting through the projects. But we will come back and get that manual written, and we do feel like that Habitat affiliates are one of our targets, that we want to go to them and say, look, here's how we did it, and here, we have the similar financing and whatnot that they are already using. So it should be a good fit if their local community is at the point where they're ready to accept the program.
It seems like one of the things that maybe prevents this from being a more easily scalable solution or something that you could move from one city to another is the fact that every city has its own zoning code. And there are some zoning codes that explicitly ban ADUs. And so I'm curious, I guess from the two of you who are Californians, California just adopted a statewide law that is meant to help scale ADUs up and meant to make them a more easy option for creating new affordable housing statewide. And I'm curious, and then in Austin, I'm just interested in hearing a little bit about how you've dealt with your zoning code, the kinds of obstacles you've run into, and what kinds of changes you think could help scale this up.
So I do want to say one of the things that's curious of coming to this event is to see that the room is not filled with the typical affordable housing development organizations that we see in California that are mostly they're building large-scale rental housing projects, and those are projects that are using low-income housing tax credits, and they're looking at projects that need to be 40 to 60 units in size before they pencil. And here we have a program that doesn't work for that group, for those groups. And so we're looking for community design centers and small little local nonprofits that are trying to figure out how do we do a small scale thing where every one of the projects has to be specially tailored to the needs of that family and the local codes and the situation of their unit. So it's a challenge, and I don't have a good answer.
I think David's point that this is different than the traditional affordable housing industry. For those of us who are interested in creating programs where there's an impact for a low-income homeowner or low-income tenant, we're writing the rules and figuring out what that looks like. So without that tax credit kind of behind us, all that financing is something we're reinventing or creating new, and in each city there are different players, so that's fascinating. I think what's interesting in Los Angeles is that because there's this new rule in place, there is this lag time where the local, our local building and safety and planning has to catch up to the state law, and there hasn't been marketing that has been done. There's actually because of this NIMBYism movement, despite the affordability crisis, there hasn't been a marketing for ADUs. We're actually keeping our ADU pilot project kind of on the down low until we're ready for the ribbon cutting and we're ready for people to come and take tours, and maybe someday we'll do the 1,200 people tour and be able to really change the mindset. But that being said, there's actually, Denise mentioned over 2,000 permits in Los Angeles, and the law that changed that was adopted this year really helped shape that. So I think it remains to be seen kind of where that direction will go, but now we're actually trying to figure out how do we bring people who normally haven't been working together, your smaller CDFIs with your smaller nonprofits and innovative developers, and that's a relationship and a partnership that in Los Angeles we're just trying to figure out what that looks like. And that's exciting.
So in Austin, we've actually had a lot of support over the last couple of years in our city for accessory dwelling units. We've moved, closer and closer to loosening up the land development code where it's easier to build more ADUs in more places. So in 2015, our ADU ordinance changed a little bit and removed some parking requirements and allowed them to be a little bit larger. And I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but kind of the last chart I saw 4 or 5 months ago said that we were on track to permit about 350 this year, which, 10 years ago, maybe 20 of them were built. So it's a pretty big change, and I think that is some part due to land development code, also just the housing market in Austin, and that people are selling them and they're really attractive housing for a lot of people. We're also rewriting our land development code right now, and my organization is advocating for adding some parts in the land development code that acknowledge ADUs as an affordable housing tool and working them into the density bonus programs that are generally offered for those larger scale multifamily affordable housing developments that are more of what you think of it with affordable housing. And so we're trying to build in tools that consider other lower density missing middle housing types in those affordability tools as well.
So a question for you, Nicole. When I think of Texas, and to some extent Austin as well, I think of cities that have really grown out, and cities where, it's sort of like the classic American suburban dream. Is that still true? Is it hard to sell people on this type of housing in that environment, or are attitudes changing? Are people I guess, who wants to live in them? And am I wrong about Texas, or?
Austin is very different from the rest of Texas, but most large cities in Texas are actually pretty progressive. In Austin, like many cities, we're seeing a huge interest in people living downtown and close to downtown. So all the neighborhoods that we work in are all pretty close to downtown. We're a city that has a moderately dense downtown and then surrounded completely by single-family neighborhoods. So I think there is definitely an interest from, I would think, a majority of people, but that might just be my own little bubble, in supporting ADUs. But there's also the other side of people wanting to kind of protect what they've known for a long time and what they see in their neighborhood. And with increasing density downtown, ADUs have actually kind of become the lesser of all of the evils possible in our single-family neighborhoods, which is kind of weird that they've gotten more support lately because they're looking at changes to the code that might mean that there could be a 4-plex or a 6-plex in their neighborhood, and that's just crazy, and an ADU is okay if we're thinking about that, and so it's, I don't know, it's
kind of the most comfortable density
Yeah.
option. We have another question in the audience, if we can get a mic. Oh, it's on its way.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for all your presentations. It was great. My name is Kimia, and I'm from the San Francisco Planning Department, and we also have a very successful ADU program there. But it's always, homeowners or property managers kind of going forward and putting these units in place. And whenever we wanted to kind of talk about using this program as an affordable housing program or tool, we always seen resistance from the city, and because it costs a lot per unit, and it doesn't seem like a very cost-efficient program for affordable housing. So I kind of wanted to learn a little bit more about how your program, especially Austin and LA, that are kind of at the same scale as San Francisco, how your organization's kind of brought into this. Where is your organization funded from, and how much kind of in total each of these units get subsidy from the city? So per unit, what's the city subsidy, including the forgivable loans and including the, the discount that you guys give for the design part? So that's what I'm curious about.
So for the units that we are building right now, excluding the financing program that we're working on, the total subsidy, if you even can call it that, is probably about $15,000 for the unit. And that's just a couple $1,000s for the permit fee waivers, and then all of the fee that my organization lets go of to do the project. So my organization is funded partially by a fee-for-service. The Alley Flat Initiative is only part of what we do. We also do other affordable housing projects and community development. But the Alley Flat Initiative is supported by grants from a Texas Family Foundation, and then it's also supported by an annual fundraiser that we do every year where we do a tour of our ADUs that we just did at the end of September, actually.
Great. I think in Los Angeles for the pilot project, if a traditional architecture fee is 10% and that was free for the homeowner and the cost is $200,000, that's at least a $20,000 subsidy of just design. And we know that that's going to be hard to scale. As a comparison, the County of Los Angeles is on the way of figuring out how to create a pilot project, 3 units, and their subsidy is a $100,000 soft second kind of forgivable loan. And so you have design, discount, permitting, as well as financing, but we still have to yet figure out what that looks like. As a nonprofit, we are also similarly funded by fee-for-service, but also by foundation funding. So we've been able to get support from organizations like a LIS and a Wells Fargo to help us spend the time thinking about how do we do policy advocacy, how do we do project management, how do we do behind-the-scenes advocacy, how do we think about putting together programs. So we're still early in that phase, so maybe in a year I can say this is what it looks like in terms of how much subsidy is provided per unit.
I'm just curious if you have any thoughts after hearing that.
I mean, the $15,000 sounds really low to me. And you're saying that there was also city subsidy, right? In addition to the 15,000, or that's included?
In our financing program, we want to build in a city subsidy that would be about $50,000 more, but right now that's not operating. So we also work with community development corporations who have access to a whole nother bucket of money from the city, which is some forms of low interest loans and some forms of forgivable loans, but it's a very case by case basis. We apply for each project for whatever the gap is in the financing that the CDC can cover, and so it's across the board. It just depends on the project.
So to close things out, I just want to ask: is there anything that each of you want to add Is there anything that you want to add that I haven't asked you about? Starting with David and ending with Helen.
Oh, one thing I wanted to bring up, and everybody talks about fee waivers, but for us in Santa Cruz, and maybe it's all across California, that fee waivers now are seen as a use of public funds, and it then triggers prevailing wage requirements, and that can be a real problem for a lot of the programs. It's kind of the prevailing wage costs more than the value of the fee waiver. It works for Habitat mostly because we'll get a fee waiver about $19,000 per unit, and then because we use volunteers, they're exempt from prevailing wage. So it works out okay for us, but almost any other group would have a real problem with that.
I guess if we're talking about how we get more of these kinds of housing in more places, I think it is sharing what you're doing in your city, or at least if you're not building ADUs, being able to highlight where this type of housing is happening in your neighborhoods. Because I think a lot of the things, we have hosted a tour of our ADUs for the last 2 years, and it's been really helpful for us to be able to show that these things are in places where people are every day and they might not even notice that they're there, and being able to talk with the people that live there and know that they're part of their community too, and it's maybe not so scary. It's been really helpful for our organization.
Helen, a final thought?
It's been fascinating today to see all the different organizations that are doing this work, and I think that there is this tendency to think, well, like, what's the nonprofit kind of and the for-profit model? And I think that it's great to have both. So hearing about Dweller and what they're planning to do, and how that is just taking away that high risk and the lack of predictability is a fascinating model that, I think is a nice balance to also the lower income, more social oriented programs like the Alley Flat Initiative and using Section 8, which is what we're trying to do. So I think for all your cities, it's great to think about, well, there's potential, and like, how do you actually kind of scale it to a range of both for-profit, nonprofit, and to think about kind of another level is, that difference between your middle income homeowner that on their own still can't do it, and like, what is that extra support you need for a low income homeowner that needs significantly more support. So that's something that I think in a few years all of our cities will probably have a better answer to, and I think that's something that's going to be really fascinating and hopefully transform the way that our nonprofit affordable housing developers will be working.
Well, thank you all so much. If we can get a round of applause for our panelists.